American was like the thing. And so they also adopted the idea of American religious freedom. So they have, the American expression rush hour. In Japanese, they'll be speaking long and then they'll say rush hour. But they call it the rush hour of the kami. K-A-M-I. Kami, means they're gods, they're deities, as in kamikaze. Remember the kamikaze pilots? Divine wind, the kami. In other words, they're committing suicide for the gods, literally. Well, anyway, the rush hour of the kami. So after World War II, MacArthur said to the emperor, he said, you must have a constitution, and in the constitution have freedom of religion. So, boy, they went crazy. And all these religions just popped up. And one of the biggest is very popular here in Dallas, known as Nichiren Shoshu or Soka Gakkai. So you can go this morning up to Midway, and there's a big Buddhist center there, and they'll be meeting, and they're having their Baptist, oh boy. It's time to quit, right? Buddhist Baptist, but anyway, they're having their Japanese Buddhism style. Really quite impressive, by the way, if you've never been. Now, as so often happens with the series I do, I never get to what I'm supposed to talk about, which is beer and wine, and that's the same is going to happen today, because before I get to beer and wine, I have to do sodas and soft drinks and all of that, all right? So I want to apologize to you if you were all excited about hearing about beer and wine. I'm very interested in those topics, and I have a lot to say, but I'll have to maybe do that another time. But anyway, I wanted, first of all, to talk about how soft drinks came into existence. The big innovation, this happened way back in the middle of the 18th century, was to put carbonated water and mix it with a drink of some kind. It could be a fruit drink, but in most cases it was a drink. And this carbonation was believed very helpful. Remember, all sodas, as they say in the Midwest, soda pop, all drinks of carbonation were considered medicine. And so all of the big three, Dr. Pepper, Coke, Pepsi, 7-Up, all these were medicine from the very beginning. In fact, everything I've talked about in this series, at one time or another, has been considered medicine, right? The pepper and the spices and the chocolate and the coffee and all of it, right? Now, there was a man named Jacob Schweppe. You've heard of Schweppes, yeah. Well, Jacob Schweppe was a Swiss guy who is considered the founder of the soft drink industry. And in 1790, he had an opportunity to take his carbonation drink to England. And he did, but then the Napoleonic Wars prevented him from returning to Switzerland, so he ended up spending his life in England, Schweppes. And of course, the number one Schweppes drink was ginger ale. And I would say probably still is today. Now, soft drinks were very, very popular starting in the 1870s because of the temperance movement. So the idea was, before that time, they're just strictly medicine. After that time, they're medicine and a drink that you drink instead of drinking beer, liquor, wine, or whatever. And so that's how the thing evolved. Now, in the meantime, there's another movement going on, and which of these eventually kind of come together, and that is the mineral water craze. Now, the place that kind of made mineral waters very well known was in Sarasota Springs, New York. Now, Sarasota Springs in the early 1800s was already a resort, and people would go there for the waters, right? And, in Europe, there are many of these places. And the United States, eventually there are many places where people go. Hot Springs, Arkansas comes to mind. So important that at Hot Springs, they actually have a national park. The smallest national park in America. A very small thing. I had an experience there one time. I wanted to go through one of these famous bathhouses they had in Hot Springs that they used as a kind of, most of them are closed now, but they used, to show. So they had it cranked up, it was kind of, like a big sauna, I think is the best way to describe it. So I went in there. It was a hot day. It was about 100 degrees in Hot Springs, Arkansas. Ooh, brutal. I went in there, and it was very, very hot and humid. And we were in there for about half an hour, and everybody was just drenched in sweat and so on. And I came out, opened the door, walked out, and it felt like I was walking into a refrigerator. And so I thought, my God, a cold front has come through. But the temperature hadn't changed outside. Is what had changed is I had been inside at 140 and walked out. 100 degrees seemed like 70 degrees. See, it's all relative. Well, anyway, there was a man in Sarasota Springs at this resort. One day, a lady complained that the potatoes were cut too thick. They made American fries, and they were cut too thick, and she sent it back. So this guy named George Crum, there at the Moon Lake Lodge, he said, I'll get her. So he sliced them as thin as he could possibly slice them and fried them up and sent them out. And immediately came back. More. Those are wonderful. George Crum had just invented potato chips. And anyway, so two things came out of Sarasota Springs, mineral water and potato chips. Now, I want to give you a term that I learned about, if I can spell it, and this second word is a very hard word for ASTHENIA. Neuroasthenia. Now, this is a medical condition. It was called Neuroasthenia americana. In other words, this is a disease only Americans had in the 1840s. It was where you have this pandemic all over the country of people having fatigue, anxiety, insomnia, and aches and pains. Sounds like the flu, right? And so they were all these people that claimed to have cure for this disease. Now, the word neuro is kind of giving you a hint. We're dealing with a psychological condition here, right? But anyway, this became popular, and they started selling Sarasota Springs water, and it went on the market, and there was every place in the country where there was some kind of mineral water became popular. In Texas, there was a group that sold crazy water crystals, and crazy water crystals were from what town? Mineral Wells, yes. Mineral Wells wouldn't be on the map except for those the mineral content of the water there. Well, anyway, they would take the water and they would just evaporate the H2O out, and what they left they'd scrape up and put in pill form and sell it all over the country. In 1932, NBC radio had a national broadcast from Mineral Wells promoting the value of these crazy water crystals, and they had their own musical group called the Crazy Medical Gang, and typical of that kind of thing in the 1930s. Well, anyway, so you have mineral waters, and then you have carbonated water. Now, these all come together in what becomes known as the soda fountain. And so the first soda fountain in the early 1800s was built in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And eventually these soda fountains become very elaborate and extensive. But again, the soda fountain's primary purpose was to mix up drinks that were medicine that the pharmacist or the doctor had told you is going to take care of that stomach ache, that migraine headache, that abscess tooth, whatever. And so this is, of course, one of the things that becomes huge, the whole business of the soda fountain, because it's the place you go then to get these concoctions, but also at the same time they started serving ice cream, and ultimately they served the story, of course, of the ice cream sundae is amazing, because they served it was illegal to serve soda on Sundays.
Yeah.
They considered soda water to be too effervescent. In other words, too excited. In other words, if it tastes good, if it makes you feel good, then it has to be bad, right? So there were many cities in America that outlawed it. So what they came up with was they could still serve ice cream. So they served ice cream, put chocolate on it, some bananas and some cherries and so on, and created something they only served on Sunday, which is called Sunday. And ultimately the spelling changed to S-U-N-D-A-E, Sunday, and became one of the most popular things. What they served that was not allowed on Sundays, what we call a float. Soda water with ice cream in it. And I would say over time the carbonation kind of replaced the natural mineral waters. Now you can still buy mineral waters to this day, and that's essentially when you buy this expensive Swiss brand called Perrier. Yeah, Perrier. Perrier is French or Swiss? French. Well, anyway, there's this. We talked last time about Nestle's. Nestle's. This is amazing. Nestle's, the company, has monopolized almost all the mineral water and all the water companies. They bought them all up. So you buy a Ozarka, right, from Arkansas. Who owns it? Nestle's. And they just go on and on. Evian and Perrier. These are all owned by Nestle. Nestle has been, shall we say, has cornered the market on water. I mean, think about that a minute. Cornered the market on water. Yeah, so anyway, let me briefly, and then we got to quit, to mention to you, of course, the most famous of the sodas, and that is the first one that we all know well is Dr. Pepper. Now, I won't go into Dr. Pepper because some of you already know. Dr. Pepper wasn't the first soft drink. That actually came out in 1871. The Lemon Superior Ginger Ale. Ginger Ale is maybe the oldest of the soft drinks. And but anyway, down in Waco, Charles Alderton, he took this idea of a drink to his friend Wade Morrison at the corner drugstore, and in Waco, and so Morrison liked it, and Morrison eventually bought the formula, and Alderton then Alderton died not long after that, but Morrison is the one who had the rights to it, and it became, and then eventually it becomes, one of the most famous drinks. First in Texas, and then now around the world. You can buy Dr. Pepper many, many places. But strangely enough, this idea that Dr. Pepper, who Dr. Pepper is named after, is a great controversy. The company really basically doesn't get into it, but there were actually two Dr. Peppers that were in Alderton's life, and Morrison's life, because Morrison, who took over it was basically given to him, this formula, he named it Dr. Pepper, but there were he was from Virginia, there were two Dr. Peppers Virginia that he knew, and something about his daughter and all of this stuff. Nobody knows for sure how that came out. By the way, what other famous drink was invented in Waco in 1937? You won't know this, so I'll tell you. Big Red. Now, let me see if I can squeeze in Coca-Cola here. Now, Coca-Cola, of course, came out the next year, 1886. Frank Pemberton, pharmacist, came up with French wine cola. And it was first served in Jacob's Pharmacy that had a soda fountain, and the big one, beautiful one, and immediately became popular. So Pemberton, Frank Robinson, and a man named Doe formed a company to sell this French wine cola as a medicine in the pharmacy, and then as a patent medicine, essentially. Robinson, then one of the owners, came up with the idea of the word Coca-Cola because it was a combination of the coca leaf extract and cola. And Pemberton, when Pemberton was very ill, 2 years later, he sold 2/3 of Coca-Cola for a loan of $1,200 to two of his friends, and he dies. And a man named Chandler comes along, and nobody wanted this, basically, this patent medicine, so he bought the whole thing. And it was Chandler that turned Coca-Cola, of course, to the famous company that it's become. Interestingly enough, it had cocaine in it, right? But in 1902, the feds seized Coca-Cola shipments because it had caffeine in it. And they thought caffeine was a dangerous drug. And of course, then they had, in 1904, the feds required them to take out, by then, this idea that it had coca leaf extract. By the way, they took out the extract, but they put it back in when they figured out a formula, which they did pretty quickly, to take the cocaine out of it. So it still has coca leaf extract in it. Not much, of course, but that's why they can still call it Coca-Cola. And anyway, 1931, the Coca-Cola people hired a man named Sundblom, a Swedish guy, who came up as an artist, and he came up with the design for the elf and for the Santa. Both of those faces were his face. So the famous Santa, Coca-Cola Santa, was this man named Sundberg. Anyway, Coca-Cola, I'll have two more things, and then we'll wrap it up. During World War II, Coca-Cola Company, Chandler, committed to the idea that every soldier in the world would be able to buy Coca-Cola for 5 cents. Now, Coca-Cola had sold for the 6.5 ounce, the one I grew up on, and the one many of you remember, and they still have what we call the small bottle today. That sold for 6 cents. It did not change for 73 years. From 1886, from the beginning, until 1959, a bottle of Coke sold for 5 cents. 1959. So that's, how I remember. You see, Pepsi, the only reason Pepsi ever took off is because Pepsi came out with essentially the same formula for 5 cents, but it was a 12-ounce bottle, twice as big. And Pepsi took off like a rocket ship. And so anyway, during the war, Chandler said, every soldier will have Coca-Cola. And so they built, you can imagine the cost of doing this, 69 plants around the world, primarily in Europe theater and in Southeast Asia, or in Asia, the Asian theater. 69 plants, just incredible cost to Coca-Cola. But that idea that they would immediately have, they did something like 69 billion bottles of Coke during the war, from 41 to 45. This is stunning numbers, right? So here's what we're leaving out today. We're not going to get to anything about Budweiser. We're not going to talk anything about Morgan David wine or any of that stuff. So I'll just have to figure out a way to bring it back in. Yeah. But anyway, in May I'm going to do the program Made in America. Now this is going to be a very whimsical kind of presentation. I will talk about people like Henry Ford and his great innovations. Basically, it's going to talk about either innovative individuals or innovative movements in America. So, some of them religious, some of them commercial, capitalistic, and so forth. But it ought to be a pretty good program. So I'll do that in this room for 3, I think Tuesdays in May. So
In the evening.
yeah, in the evening. Yeah, it's probably about 7.
You're working the booze at the same time.
In the who?
The booze. Wine
Yeah,
and
well,
beer.
yeah, I suppose because we could talk about American beer and American wine, right?
There
Yeah,
you
sure,
go.
why not? Okay.
Okay, and you left us hanging because you said there were 3 things that started in.
Oh,
What was
my
the
boy,
third one?
there's a student. When you have a student like this, it's just great, except when you make a mistake. And boy, yeah, so I forgot to tell you the third. Does anybody know this is in Dallas, downtown Dallas? 1917, Adolphus Hotel.
Oh,
The French Room, the great service organization, the Lions Club, was created. Yeah, of all the service organizations, the Lions is one of the most famous, and it's worldwide, and started in the Adolphus Hotel by a bunch of men from Dallas who wanted to do some good, and they sure have. Right? So thank you all for coming.